I'll show you how I took materials like wood, glass, and moss and transformed them into an incredible piece of furniture with a thriving moss world on the inside. This all began when spending time with Tony. We were just hanging out when I looked at the space next to the couch and thought to myself, I really need an end table. He agreed. I couldn't find anything prefabricated that I liked, so I decided to make one myself. I instantly devised the blueprint in my head, but how would I transform these raw materials into something worthwhile? Using tempered glass on top was a must. With the success of the IKEA aquariums, I might as well resort to the Swedish warehouse for this as well. The Besta shelving system was perfect for the bottom, top, and sides, which when together would look something like this. However, I had to create the front and back myself. I transferred measurements from the Besta onto scrap glass. A guide made it easy to score straight lines accordingly that I used to snap the pieces down to size. I buffed out the edges and rinsed away debris before building what's essentially an aquarium. Tape along the edges will provide consistent silicone beads, which will adhere best to glass that's clear of oil and debris. That's why I cleaned it with isopropyl alcohol. I carefully assembled the pieces after applying the beads along the appropriate surfaces. Once together, I added the internal bead, which I smoothed out before removing the tape and allowing it to cure overnight. This will become the table's primary feature and will be fully functional once it's sealed with the glass on top. I made a quick mock-up based on the measurements of this box, which I used to cut down the boards that will become the table itself. For these components to work as intended, I had to include a channel on the edges of various boards. A router table or rabbit bit probably would have been best for this, but I was able to remove the material with relative ease using a guide instead. These boards specifically are what the glass box will rest on. I determined that wooden dowels were my best option to join these to the legs. I marked everything prior to using a jig to create holes along the supports and legs. Afterward, I gave the boards a preliminary sanding to eliminate inconsistencies. Attaching the pieces from here was simple. I applied glue inside the holes before adding the dowels, brushing glue on the adjoining surfaces, and clamping the pieces together to create these identical H structures for the front and back. I repeated this gluing process for the remainder of it, assembled the pieces, and clamped them together to dry. While it did, I cut out small angled pieces for additional support. I marked along the edges to create consistent countersinks, which I used to secure these with glue and screws. For an added bonus, I wanted to include a shelf on the bottom. I cut down a panel to fit the space and accounted for the legs in the corners. I sanded this, a back panel, and the table itself to complete the finish. I also drilled holes on the underside of the bottom to attach the shelf. I did the same for the back panel. It was nearly complete, but when I test fit the box, it was slightly too big and I had to shave off excess. I don't want the glass pieces directly touching either, which is why I added these corner spacers. In the meantime, I taped it down to ensure I didn't break anything while accounting for the top. This is essentially just a picture frame that fits around the edges of the glass. It looked great, so I went on to create pocket holes in the corners before gluing, clamping, and screwing it together. Once stable, I built a jig around it to easily route out the inside edge of the frame. Of course, I also sanded it down afterward. I'll use this water-based polyurethane to finish it off because it's too cold outside to apply lacquer, which is what I actually want to use. Regardless, the simple look of a clear coat is something I've been appreciating lately. While that dried, I scraped excess silicone off the glass. However, before I put this on the table for good, I secured adjustable feet to the bottom of the legs. Another feature I wanted to include was recessed lighting. I routed the area on the top to accommodate these and maintain ventilation through the gap in the glass. Anyway, I simply stuck the light on with adhesive strips, linked the wires and taped the connections, did some cord management, and secured them with screws. Then I was able to finally add the top and lock it in through pocket holes I made earlier. I also stapled the cords to the back of the leg to keep them out of sight. To maximize the aesthetic further, I want these spacers to be a good bit thinner. I cut them down accordingly and attached them directly to the glass with adhesive strips. I added spacers along the sides as well for added support. I had extra lights as well and figured why not put them on the underside to illuminate whatever I have on the shelf. That was a lot of work, but I'm extremely pleased with how the table came together. I wanted the vast majority of features and embellishments to be pretty minimal, so the focus is predominantly on the world within. That will include various elements, but it should come as no surprise that I want the primary focus to remain on pastures of moss. Lucky for me, it warmed up enough to go collecting, and my yard is completely full of it. The vast majority may be covered by leaves, but even at this time of the year, there are scores to be found if you know where to look. Not only was I able to collect an awesome variety, but I even got pieces of wood with moss growing directly on them. It was great to spend time outdoors being inspired by nature directly, and in the process I found a lot of incredible mosses. And believe it or not, this is actually one of the best times of the year to collect it. Whenever they're in a dried out dormant state like this, for whatever reason that may be, they actually acclimate to a terrarium-like environment much easier than they would otherwise. That happens a lot quicker than you might expect as well. These mosses were pretty dry, so as soon as I added water, they sprung to life in a matter of minutes. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love seeing it happen like this. As the moss rejuvenated, many critters made themselves known as well. In a closed environment, they're not a big deal, but I'd like to minimize whatever is present here. A simple dip clean is usually enough to get rid of most, while also clearing the moss of debris. I wasn't sure when I'd get a chance to plant the table, so I placed them in this gasket box in the meantime. If I were to go through with a proper quarantine process, these would be a great option. I'll do more with all of this in a moment, but the time has finally come to transform the table into a living environment. A design like this demands a proper foundation. Luckily, moss isn't very demanding, and a simple sand false bottom will work well. This thin layer of sand is enough to separate water that would otherwise foul the environment, which is necessary to maintain optimal humidity. No one will see it, but you know I had to take the time to make it nice and even. Adding a layer of activated carbon above this will further ensure the system remains as healthy as possible. The moss will appreciate substrate as well. When combined, this blend of cocoa fiber, topsoil, sand, orchid bark, and sphagnum moss will hold up well under the conditions the moss needs to thrive. Since these aren't rooting plants, a thin layer is more than enough. With the foundation set and all of the pieces in place, we can finally move on to the step that you and I have been waiting for, the moss. There's nothing quite like placing the first patch of moss in these projects. This one is the cornerstone of what will soon be a luscious carpet of green. Adding various species creates a unique look and textural contrast like you'd see outside. Sparingly using wood helped with this as well, without taking away from the moss. However, as I was placing these, I saw movement. A baby isopod was scurrying around, but it wasn't the only one. There was another on this branch as well. Seeing them was a fun surprise, but as much as I wanted to sit and watch, I had a task to complete. Watching green fill the space is always the point in the process where I can truly relax. Don't get me wrong, the entire journey is enjoyable, but there's something so cathartic about this. The natural and tangled look of various mosses I wanted to mimic is especially visible on this final branch. To the untrained eye, this may appear complete, but it's not. There's a glaring issue that I can't unsee. This, and this. These patches of debris are detracting from the beauty of my moss pasture. So I did what I had to. I meticulously picked out as many pieces as I could find because I didn't want to wait for them to break down naturally. I fluffed up the moss as well to make it appear undisturbed. Although I hydrated everything earlier, the system itself needs more water. However, this isn't regular water. No, I treated it with mosquito bits. In short, these granules contain a soil bacteria that specifically eliminates mosquitoes and those annoying fungus gnats. The moss, isopods, springtails, and other critters will be completely unaffected by this naturally occurring remedy, which I'm adding as a preventative measure so I don't end up with gnats. With the top on and everything in place, I think this table came together beautifully. I absolutely love the integration of woodwork, design, art, and nature that goes into making a unique one-of-a-kind piece like this. A piece that, by my calculations, houses at least 13 unique species of moss. Time will tell as they grow in while this end table establishes into a world all of its own.